Okay, so last weekend at the men's breakfast, Jack Grimes was the speaker. Jack is in his 90s. I think he may be the oldest deacon. But it's his story. That's what he said. This is my story. And I cut it short. I don't know how I managed to knock the video phone button off, but he didn't speak just maybe 2 or 3 minutes past what I had. So y'all enjoy.
Jack Grimes. And, I can't. Doug Carnes preached a fun sermon about. He said, "I can't tell your story, and you can't tell mine." And I've got the oldest story of any of you men here. Go back a long ways, but I want to start off like in the beginning. In 1941, December the 7th, they declared war, and my mother had been sick all of my life, my young life of 7 years, and It bothered me so, and you know, I don't know if I'd ever heard the word war or not. And I don't know if I'd only been to church. I can only been to church twice when I was 7 years old, and there's two reasons for that. My mother was sick and not able to go most of the time. And another reason, when I was only means of going anywhere was mule and wagon. And the reason for that was, I was told, when I was born, my dad had almost a brand new automobile, but he went out one morning to go somewhere and it was gone. And there's a man by the name of Lawrence Cooper, and somebody had seen him driving that, and of course Dad didn't have no money to hire a lawyer or get into, so for 8 years my family was not able to have an automobile. But when the World War II broke out and was declared, we were living on Providence Road over here, and the old house stood up with rock pillows under it. And I climbed up, I was so worried about it, and I climbed up under that house and I prayed as a 7-year-old child. And asked the Lord not to let my daddy have to go to service, you know, because of circumstances in our life. 39 years later, my daddy passed away, and we had worked together for 3.5 years. I went back up to the old home place the next morning, and I was walking across the yard, and I said, "Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do without you." And the Spirit spoke and said, "Do you remember that time you crawled under the corner of that house?" And I said, "Yes, Lord, I do." And he said, "I heard that prayer and I answered that prayer." And he proved that, you know. So I've had a good life, and God has blessed me. And you know, by then I'd had an experience. My experience was the Spirit of the Lord speaking to me. All through the Bible, it speaks of all that word of the Lord. You know, I have even from Adam's day on. But I knew the voice of the Lord, and by then, and many, many things. that took place. And I appreciate that, and the Lord's been good to me. But I want to go back to about the car. I talked to the Lord many times. I says, if I ever come in contact with Mr. Cooper, I said no proof of it no more than my daddy did. But I said, Lord, I'm going to tell him I'm Levi Grimes' son. I want to see the expression on his face. In 1993, Betty's sister, my sister-in-law, was hospitalized up here at Canton in the hospital. And back then, they had your name outside the door, you know, you could tell who was in the room. So I was going down the hallway and looking in there, Lawrence Cooper's name was on the door. I said, Lord, yeah, this is my time. And I walked in the door. I just got through the door. And I seen him in the bed over there. And the Spirit spoke and said, don't go no further. So I went on up to Ruth Lee's room and stayed a while and come back down. And the family was gathered out in the hallway. He had passed away. I come back close. And I'm thankful today that I did not say anything to him, because I would have blamed myself for that which I don't know what sickness was. But anyway, I went on my way. I want to tell you about Ed and Gail gave me a book, and it's about the 12 tribes of the Woody family. It was from East LJ out on Big Creek Road. And it was this family, their dad had abandoned them, and their dad he'd be gone for a year at a time, and he'd come in home, and this there was 3 boys, I mentioned it, and the mother, but there was Clarence. He was 10 years old, and a younger brother, 8, and then there was Clyde, and he lied and told that he was older than what he was, and he got in the Navy, and he was in the Navy. So Clarence got up one morning, he heard his mother out in the yard. She was down on her knees praying, and she prayed for a while, and then she started shouting. And Clarence went out there, and she says, I want you to, she says, there's nothing in the house but some cornmeal, and the cow had went dry, and there's a few grubby apples left from the fall before. He said, I want you to hook up the mule and wagon and go to, it was over, they said, almost a day's drive there and back over to Dial community, to the Devonport store. I've been there, went there many times, because some of my family lived up there. Right on the banks of the Decola River. And she gave them a list, and they went over to Mr. Davenport's farm, and they gave Mr. Davenport the list, and he said, boys, I'm sorry. He says, everybody's in the same shape y'all are in, and says, I've just let out more credit than I had. And I've got more corn than I've got a place to put it. So all they need to do is head back home. So they said they just sat around and spent time talking as they went home, the Clarence and the 8-year-old boy. And he said they got back home and they said we never get no mail, but said we're gonna look in the mailbox anyway. So they did, and there was a letter in there. And they opened it up, and it was from Clyde. He had sent a $50 check that very same day she had prayed. So the next day they got up, and she gave them the list, and they took it back to Mr. Davenport. And the boy said they wanted to have some fun, and they said, "Oh, here," says, Mama said, "Fill this order," and says, "We don't want to come home without anything," and they didn't show him a check, and Hines, after they had their little fun, they give him the check, and Mr. Davenport sat down and cried. He says, "That's the most money I've seen in a long, long time." Well, they said that it was best dry there, and it's in the spring of the year. This was in 1920. That's over 100 years ago now. But he said Clarence, he was 10-year-old, but he told this story to his daughter and her family 64 years later. And he said that they never had to worry about food anymore. But their dad would come back home about once a year, and he said Clarence, his dad got old and couldn't work, and he came back to Clarence's house, and Clarence took him in and kept him for 8 years. And I thought it was such a story of love and forgiveness, because there, and he passed away. But I was working for Brother Monroe Gunner, and I don't know why I got off on the subject. And then he came in early one day, and Monroe just sat down on the tailgate of his truck, and we began to talk, and I don't know how we got off on the subject. And I told Brother Monroe this story, and in a minute, Brother Monroe got his handkerchief out and started crying. And he just sat there and wiped tears. He never made a comment of no kind. And but I thought that was, I've been there, we've not, our family young, when we lived at Providence Road, Mr. Wood owned a farm. We sharecropped, what we called it.